This picture shows Peppa standing next to a second girl, but there's something even stranger inside the house. Underneath the stairs, there's a basement. Upstairs, there's a room almost nobody remembers, and that very same section under the stairs has already appeared hiding more than one different space. Now look at the picture again. It isn't an official scene, but it's the perfect question to get us inside this house. You already know, right? Another Cinewave is starting. The mystery. The strange part starts when you actually look at Peppa's house. Underneath the staircase that appears so many times, there's a basement with a long flight of stairs leading down into a space we've never really seen. And upstairs, there's at least one more room that probably went completely unnoticed by you. But the strangest detail is right underneath the stairs, because depending on the story, that exact same spot seems to hide more than one different space. So forget about the picture on the wall for a moment. The question isn't who that girl is. We already know the bizarre theory about Peppa's twin sister. The question is, how many parts of Peppa Pig's house were right in front of us this entire time without anyone noticing? Peppa's house seems simple for a reason. The show almost always has us moving through the same few places: the living room, the kitchen, Peppa and George's bedroom, their parents' bedroom, the bathroom. After so many episodes, it feels like we could draw this house from memory, right? But there's a problem. Underneath the stairs, there's a door, and when that door finally becomes part of the story, it doesn't lead to a tiny closet packed with toys. It leads downstairs, as we're going to show you in the episode Power Cut. In this story, Mummy Pig needs to look for something in the basement, and that's when the show reveals a part of the house that practically never appears in the family's everyday life. Look closely. The staircase goes down several steps. The entire environment changes. The walls lose that clean, colorful look the upstairs rooms have and turn into exposed red brick. There's a dark handrail running along the stairs, and there are even spider webs. Maybe that's where Mrs. Skinny Legs came from. All of this is inside Peppa's house. The detail stands out precisely because it doesn't match the image we normally have of that place. Upstairs, everything is open, clean, colorful, and familiar. Underneath the stairs, there's a dark, rarely used space that looks like it was ignored for a very long time. Judging by the noise, Daddy Pig left a lot of junk down there, but we never actually see that mess. And the most interesting part is that this basement isn't hidden in some distant corner of the house. The entrance is in one of the most visible areas. We walked past that door over and over again without ever having a reason to ask what was behind it. And maybe that would be all there was to it. A basement that appeared once and was later forgotten. Actually, it was hidden because several episodes later, Peppa opens that same door again, and the basement entrance is no longer there. The staircase that used to go down into the room has been covered up, but the spider webs are still there. But before we get to that, there's another part of the house that helps explain why these rooms can go so unnoticed. Secret room. This other part is upstairs, and here's something interesting. The more you try to remember Peppa's house, the more you realize that your memory only reconstructs the rooms that appear all the time, but you forget everything else. In the upstairs hallway, there aren't just the bedrooms we know best. There's also a guest room, and this is exactly the kind of detail that goes unnoticed because it isn't part of Peppa, George, Mummy Pig, or Daddy Pig's normal routine. Think about it. We follow this family inside their house all the time. We see them waking up, playing, taking baths, going downstairs to the living room, and having guests over. But an entire room can exist there without ever becoming part of the way we remember the house. And that starts to explain why the basement seems so strange, doesn't it? The show doesn't reveal the entire house. It only shows the part that's necessary for that day's episode. So when an episode needs Peppa's bedroom, that's where we go. When it needs the living room appears, and so on. But the spaces that don't serve a purpose at that moment disappear from our attention. And that's how a house that looks tiny from the outside manages to contain places that almost nobody remembers. But the guest room is still a perfectly normal room. It might be forgotten, it might not seem like much, but there's nothing truly impossible about it. We'll show you in the episode Grandpa Pig's Christmas Present. Mummy Pig's parents are spending Christmas at Peppa's house, and they're sleeping there. Look at the scene. It's a green bedroom with a few pictures on the wall, a wooden chest in the corner, and that's basically it. But that room exists, and we almost never go inside it. The problem begins when we go back to the staircase. Would you like to have a secret room like Peppa? Comment the hashtag pig so we can get to know you. Closet. Because there's another story where the space directly underneath the staircase doesn't just lead to the basement. There also appears to be a kind of storage room, packed with things that have been put away. Boxes, cleaning supplies, stacked up stuff. A cramped space used specifically to hide everything you don't want sitting out in plain sight. Every house has something like that. Where do you keep your closet full of old junk? Tell us! In Peppa's house, it's underneath the very same staircase that would lead to the basement, which is a change controlled by the animators. And this is where the floor plan starts getting weird, because that section of the house that already served as the entrance to a secret basement now also contains another space. Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe this room sits before the staircase that goes down inside the hill. Didn't get it? We'll explain. Look at Peppa's house from the outside. The main floor of the house sits on top of that hill, but if there's a basement, then it has to go down into the ground, right? Which means there's an even bigger mystery about what could be hidden in there, but the show never stops to explain any of it. Maybe the entrance changes depending on the angle, because if the basement were just an old detail the show never used again, we could simply treat all of this as a set change. But the basement comes back. And when it reappears, something happens that confirms that space is still part of the house. It becomes Peppa's hiding place. Space. And this changes the way we look at that area quite a bit, because now the basement stops being just a strange detail from an old episode. It becomes part of the house again. When Daddy Pig decides to set up an office for Peppa, that exact space is the one that ends up being used. In other words, the show didn't simply forget that there was something underneath the stairs, it reused the place, on purpose, already showing that the artists were changing Peppa's house for a new phase. The house that seems to look the same in every episode isn't as simple as our memory makes it seem, right? And that becomes even more obvious when the family itself changes. Family. For a very long time, the most familiar image of that house was practically unchanging. Peppa, George, Mummy Pig, and Daddy Pig. Then Evie arrived. And this is where there's a story that seems perfect for creating a fake mystery. It would be very easy to look at the old house, count the rooms we remembered, and ask, okay, but where is the new baby going to sleep? Except that question has one problem. The house changed! Peppa's house can change along with the family, and Evie makes that much easier to notice because her arrival led Daddy Pig to renovate the house. The place you remember from the episodes isn't the same anymore. Look how much bigger it got! And now we can go back to the question from the beginning without having to make up an answer. There's a new video here every day, so subscribe and hit the bell to stay up to date. The answer. Remember that picture with Peppa and another girl from our thumbnail?
The image works because it plays directly into a feeling that the house already gives us. The feeling that there's something there you had never seen before. And now that it has been renovated, the chances of finding something like that have gone down. But the real hidden detail is somewhere else. And to find it, you need to go back to the most ordinary part of the house. That staircase! Because after everything we've seen, it stops being just a connection between two floors, right? It's the point where the house starts becoming difficult to reconstruct. You have a basement going down from there. You have another space hidden in that same area, Peppa's hiding place. And you have that basement appearing again after the house gets renovated. All of this in a place that, when seen from the outside, looks so simple that a child could draw it in just a few seconds. And that's why the final detail isn't an object hidden on a shelf. It's the house's floor plan itself. The house. The more episodes you compare side by side, the more you realize that Peppa's house wasn't really designed to be fully understood. It works according to the story being told. If the episode needs a basement, the basement exists and can be shown. If it needs a place to store things, that part of the house suddenly becomes important. It almost seems like magic, and maybe it really is considering the episode The Tooth Fairy proved that magic exists in Peppa's universe. If the family grows, the house can grow along with them, which is exactly what happened. And that explains why you can watch so many episodes, instantly recognize the house from the outside, and still discover a room you didn't even remember was there. Now go back one last time to that picture hanging on the wall. The second girl grabs your attention because it looks like something was hidden, but after really going inside this house, it becomes clear that the most interesting question was never, who is that girl? It's something else. How much of Peppa's house do you actually know? Because you know the living room, you know the main bedrooms too. You've seen the staircase thousands of times. But behind, underneath, and around those places are spaces that only appear when the show decides to open a new door. And some of them were practically right in front of us the entire time, weren't they? Who would have imagined that guest room? So the next time Peppa runs down those stairs to go play, look at the door underneath them, because now you know that it's one of the strangest parts of the entire house. Or at least it was, before the renovation. The renovation. But there's one thing that completely changes any attempt to create a full map of this house. It actually got bigger. When the family finds out that a new baby is coming, a new bedroom doesn't simply appear out of nowhere. The house goes under construction, Mr. Bull and his crew arrive to do the work, and the renovation is big enough that Peppa and her family have to temporarily move out of the house and stay in a trailer in the yard. But look at the result! Peppa and George got separate, bigger bedrooms, and look at how much that changes everything. Because if you take an old scene of the house and try to match it perfectly with a newer scene, you might end up searching for an explanation for a difference that the show itself has already explained. It's not exactly the same house anymore. New spaces appear because the structure itself changed, and the setting improved along with it. This also debunks a theory that sounds pretty convincing at first, that Evie arrived and simply wouldn't have anywhere to sleep, which turned out to be completely false. The show reveals exactly the opposite. Her arrival was important enough to transform one of the most recognizable houses in animated TV. And after discovering that, it becomes even harder to look at that simple little house from the beginning and believe we knew every part of it. We actually knew much less than we thought. Good thing you have our channel to find out everything.
We've left 2 videos on your screen so you can choose and keep having fun with us. See you in the next video.